Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome, everyone, to the 11th edition of Trends. I don't think we've ever had a larger gathering to hear its presentation. Trends dates back to 1996. We're delighted that we have so many friends here in the room. I want to thank the team that put Trends together, led by Chris Barge, but Chris is very quick to say that it's a team effort of writers, some of whom are here, photographers, graphic designers, web folks. It's a major effort to put Trends together. I'd like to make sure that you know who among our staff is here. They might still be outside, but if anyone from the foundation team is here, would you kind of wave your hands and say hello? Thank you. And then just to embarrass our trustees, if any of our trustees or former trustees are here, could you please stand and be recognized? And almost exactly on cue, I want to recognize Josie Heath, who just walked in. So the Trends report over time has continued to evolve. It began by asking what. It continues to ask what's next, and even more and more is asking to what end, in concert with the Foundation's vision of equity and creating systems where all in Boulder County have the opportunity to thrive. I was so nervous I forgot to introduce who I am. I'm Jeff Hirota, the current CEO of the Community Foundation. And I say current because I still think of myself coming after Josie Heath. So, the Boulder County Trends Report is, of course, this magazine that you all have, and I hope that you will grab some on your way out to share with your contacts. That's what they're for. It's also on our website. If you Google Boulder County Trends or go to the Community Foundation website, you'll see an interactive display there of some 150 community indicators. And now, for the first time in our strategic planning outreach, we asked many of you in focus groups or surveys, interviews, on what you most appreciated about the Community Foundation, and at the top of that list was Trends. But with that appreciation, you had a request, and that is do more with Trends. And we heard you, and Trends is now going year-round. It began with an every other year Community Indicators report. It is now launching this year a podcast, the first of which launched just this month in partnership with KGNU. You can hear our podcast soon wherever you can receive podcasts, but right now through the KGNU or the Community Foundation website. And I'd like to introduce Rosanna, who is our Trends reporter, working with KGNU, to say a few words about her experience with the podcast. Rosanna, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Jeff. I'm so happy to be here with you, all of you today. And I came with cards so that I can be concise, not get too emotional, because that's the way I am. My name is Rosanna Longo-Better. I am the only one in my family to have had the opportunity to obtain a bilingual education, thanks to my grandmother, Raquel, who was a visionary and made sure that her 3 granddaughters back in Ecuador became bilingual. It was super important for her. I am looking around today with my glasses because I'm aging and I need them now. And I see a lot of friendly faces, and that is good. That is really good. Today, I want to thank you for coming and for the support you are always giving to initiatives that matter for the well-being of the people living among us. I am an immigrant, like most of us, living with my family in beautiful Boulder County. As part of a new equity initiative by the Community Foundation and Boulder County and KGNU Community Radio, I am now the bilingual reporter for the station. Yes! I had the honor to intern for the League of Women Voters, Peggy's here, and KGNU Community Radio to produce pieces that were important, and give them to Maeve Conran, the news director, my boss. And it was such an experience for me. And I will always thank the League for believing in me. I'm also have been producing the Spanish show Pasa la Voz, volunteering at the station for the last 3 years. My first assignment was to investigate the topic of housing and to concentrate our eyes in the complex issue of infrastructure of our mobile home communities. What I found there, it really touched my heart. I was able to witness the problems that we faced around accessibility to clean water, to the need of land ownership, to the need of people knowing their rights. If you want to listen to the whole episode, it's 30 minutes. It's what we will call in media, it is 30 minutes of audio. It is a mini documentary. It's a lot of work. Find us, if you want to listen to the whole thing, please find us wherever you get your podcast. Go to our website, kgnu.org, go to the Trends website and look for us under podcast. Start following us, to register and follow us. I invite you to be part of this conversation and to bring along ideas and solutions that are in your mind. I found through my research the resiliency of the human spirit, and that gave me the strength to continue the hard work. I have now the perfect job because I get to connect directly with the people around us that are experiencing the issues that are hard. I have been assigned the task to produce the Trends podcast that is a complement to the magazine and the new website that brings important data to light for us. To understand that what we need to do is to build equity with connection and purpose. And I want to pause there because I want to recognize that if you look into the magazine, you're going to see Spanish translation too. And we need to incorporate that. And I just want to, really stop and say thank you. Thank you so much, Community Foundation, for doing that. Through this podcast, we will tell the stories of the community through audio. We will allow their voices and their stories to be heard. That's the purpose. My experience producing this first podcast has given me the opportunity to connect directly with our community and to bring those voices, las voces de la gente, las voces de las personas, the voices of those people that are working to fix the issues, but most important, the underrepresented voices of our community to the airwaves. Voices of real people, nuestra gente, all frame around valid data, deep investigation, deep, by experienced reports like Sheikh Hassel and Chris Barge that have been doing the work for a long time. I am honored to be part of this initiative. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Well, we are thrilled to have Rosanna Longo Better doing the Trends podcast for us. And just as a transition here, I'd like to, if I can figure out how to do it, I'd like to play just a 2-minute clip that'll give you a taste of the Trends podcast from the most recent episode.
When we call mobile home, we relate it with wheels to something that it moves, but really the mobile homes are not to move.
When you say mobile home, people get the idea that you can hook it up to your trailer and bye, I'm heading out to another park, but it's not the reality. I mean, so there's some language there which manufactured is the word that we're using now.
The perception is that they're low-income families, perception that many of them are Latinos, but we have a lot of working families. We have teachers, we have business owners that live within these communities, and the most affordable housing is the manufactured home. The reality that the land is never theirs, it puts people in a vulnerable position.
You know, especially the people here, the owners, you know, it's always more wealthier people, more people with power. So people like us that are, you know, lower income or, you know, that we live here, I guess we have a lot less of a voice, you would call, you know. So with the city looking at this, I feel like it would be a big, it would make a big impact in the lives here and for everyone. You know, everyone would feel heard, you know, and I feel like that's the right way to go about this, you know. I feel like Boulder has a lot of protected areas, you know, and I feel like Boulder protects a lot of land. You know, I know a lot of open spaces, parks, so I feel like protecting someone's home would be a great thing, you know?
All right. Well, my thanks to KG&U for producing that, and I just saw Maeve Conran. Where'd you go? Oh, you're hiding back there. She's the editor and the news director at KG&U Radio. Thank you for our partnership. Right now, I just want to transition into, you know, the chief findings of the report. And first of all, my name's Chris Barge. I'm Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at the Community Foundation. I just want you to know how many people have been involved in producing this. It's really a privilege to be able to work with all of these folks. I see Cindy Sutter back there. Will you raise your hand, Cindy? She for the last couple of editions, has been very involved in reporting and writing some of the chapters. Shay Castle, are you here? Oh, hi Shay, in the back. Shay, of course, has Boulder Beat, continues to independently cover Boulder City Council, and did some reporting and writing for this Trends report. We also have Gretchen Minikheim, who's on family leave right now, and she did amazing work. Jeff's been involved. Julia Vandenover, are you here right now? She's going to be taking our picture in just a minute. She produced, she was a photographer, along with all the file photos that the Daily Camera generously continues to contribute. Martine Better, where are you, Martine? Yep. So your mom, Rosanna, gave credit to the Community Foundation for the Spanish translation, when in fact you deserve credit for actually doing the Spanish translation. Thank you for your work. Megan Vallejo, you tried to leave us, but now we've got you working to not only produce these events, but also produce these 150 indicators that we analyze. And online you can go. The report only shows about a third of the statistics that we comb through. It's really the material that we feel rises to answer the question, what's new and persistent? But of course, there's many different lenses to look at all this information through, and that's why we provide as a service this website that's 3 layers deep. You can go into any chapter you want, click on the button that says data, and you can explore all of the various indicators. So I'm just showing the website here, but Megan went in and provided narrative discussion next to every single one of the indicators. So Megan, where are you? Somewhere? She's been here all day. She must have stepped into the lobby. Now I want to, but also I want to recognize Boulder women. Penny Schwind, are you here? Okay. They've done incredible work getting this website up. Vermilion designed the website. I see you, Bob. Thank you. And we also, for the first time, have a trends video, which I'm going to show now. So this is about 4.5 minutes. It'll give the highlights of the report.
Behold, big, beautiful Boulder County. We're so lucky to call this little corner of the universe our home. With drop-dead gorgeous views and one of the most robust economies in the nation, we've got a lot going on in 740 square miles, from the Continental Divide to nearly I-25. So much is happening, truth be told, it's sometimes difficult to feel like you're seeing the whole picture. Just take a gander at each acre of pristine, preserved, and protected land we have for every county resident. And it's easy to see why we are a national leader in open space conservation. But contrary to popular belief, our environment isn't perfect. Just ask Marcus McCauley, who spends his time combating soil erosion, affecting both farmers and local ecologies. And our crackerjack economy is about as hard to miss as the scenery. Nearly 40,000 jobs have been added to the workforce in the last decade. And the average listing price for homes has more than doubled in 15 years. Though the red-hot market hasn't benefited everyone equally. Take Nikki Larson, who spent over a decade actively and enthusiastically contributing to her community. And like the majority of Boulder residents, the Larsons rented. But when the owners sold the rental, they were effectively priced out and moved to Denver to buy a home. A telltale sign of instability for many segments of the market that struggle to find affordable or accessible housing. And yet, this financial boom has also put businesses in a position to give back to organizations such as Growing Gardens, with programs like Pledge 1% Colorado that has clocked in hundreds of volunteer hours for Front Range nonprofits and over $10 million in donations. However, wouldn't you know it, Boulder County residents actually give at a lower rate than the national average, which amounts to leaving a $68 million opportunity on the table for our community. But let's not forget the over 2,600 nonprofit organizations that provide benefits that we all enjoy, like one of the best art scenes around, including Colorado's largest Dia de los Muertos celebration, which speaks to an evolution of showcasing the diverse range of experiences making up our collective voice. Yet, unfortunately, it is still the most vulnerable that are the ones least likely to be represented, as is quite literally the case in the U.S. Census, which translates to an average loss of $2,300 in federal funding for every Colorado resident unaccounted for. And things are changing fast. The rising tide of home prices has created a ripple effect that is literally transforming who we are. Housing and childcare costs are in part driving away families with children. Along with a growing retired population, the median age has increased more than 14 months since 2009. Though, for those fortunate enough to live here, education access is creating greater opportunities for our youth. Full-day free kindergarten will help ensure our youngest residents will get the best start possible. And high school graduation rates are improving across the county, especially for Latino and low-income students beyond the state average. This is good news for addressing our historic disparities through the inclusion of diverse perspectives, such as that of Zaid Atkinson's, whose very current experiences with discrimination influence his advocacy today. Hopefully, we can continue this trajectory in all public arenas, not the least of which being elected office. Suffice it to say, Boulder County is a lot to get your head wrapped around. It's big and messy, beautiful and complex, best in class and falling behind. Thankfully, Trends is here to give you the whole picture. Because we believe the first step to becoming a good neighbor is becoming a good knower. Explore trends in your community. Discover, connect, engage.
Didn't they do a good job with that? Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit more about the chief findings, but first of all, I want to encourage all of you. You have a magazine on your chair, but you represent really an incredibly strong cornerstone of our community. You are thought leaders, you're civic leaders, you lead nonprofits, you participate on boards, you're part of our institutions around this county. And you are what I consider, from a publishing perspective, my chief distribution vehicle. So we have extra boxes, and please just think about what organization might want more than one copy. This is why we produce it. So please either leave here today with extra copies or get in touch with us. My contact information is on the back of the magazine. Also, if you can answer affirmatively the question, will a trends presentation help advance the community impact of the organization you're associated with? Please do call me up or send me an email. I'd be happy to come give a presentation to your organization. Really the Q&A, which we'll have some of here after this presentation, is the best part because it allows you to just think about the context in which you're working and then try to evolve those ideas in your strategy. And then finally, I'd like to encourage all of you that this is one of the programmatic efforts of the Community Foundation. We have many others, and all of this runs on the generosity of the community that we serve. And so please don't be shy about donating to your Community Foundation. Okay, without further ado, let's dive a little bit more into the findings from this year's Trends Report. So a little bit about the Community Foundation. Many of you are familiar with us. We have been here in the community since 1991. We are a community catalyst, responding to immediate needs and anticipating future challenges. Through informed decision-making, we inspire ideas and ignite action and mobilize diverse resources to improve the quality of life here in Boulder County. So we rely on trends and we publish it as a resource for all of you. I want to thank our sponsors. I saw a couple of representatives today. The Knight Foundation, Boulder County Government, Boulder Community Health. I saw Daryl here. Where are you? Raise your hand. There you are. Thank you for your support. The Boulder Chamber, Google, and Plant Moran. Are any representatives of those sponsors here? If so, please wave your hand. Oh, great. Hey, Dee from Boulder Community Health. And I see John Taylor in the back there from the Boulder Chamber. Thank you for our partnership. Okay, diving right in. Who are we? In the video, you heard about the Larsons, Nikki and Noah, and it really struck us. Shay connected with them in the demographics chapter. Struck us that they were really an example of what we want to have. We want high civic engagement. We want people pitching in when there's a crisis, like recovering from the 4 Mile fire, stumping for city council candidates, helping to run issue campaigns. They did all of that, but when it came time to think about not renting anymore, buying a home, they realized that they were priced out of this area. And so they live in Wheat Ridge now, and it's Boulder County's loss. And so really when we talk about demographics, ironically more and more, we're really talking about our housing crisis. We know that we come from other states. I always like to do this. Please raise your hand if you were born in Boulder County. That's pretty good. I give a lot of presentations where there's 2 or 3 hands. Of course, there's almost 300 of you in this crowd. Raise your hand if you were born in Colorado. Okay. Now raise your hand if you were born outside of Colorado. Okay, that's us in a nutshell, right? 55% of us were born in another U.S. state, and you can see the breakdown of where all we come from. And this is, becomes relevant when we talk about people's connection to this community that we love. It takes a while. We continue to follow this trend. Actually, our out-year forecast for the fact that we are joining the first world in welcoming more and more seniors to our population continues, but the forecast has been revised downward, and I have to wonder whether it's the home prices that have something to do with that. But still, that yellow line is by far the biggest trend as you forecast over the next couple of decades. And this is a picture of Ray Myers. We have a story about him in our demographics chapter. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's one of almost 14,000 Vietnam vets that we have here in this county. About 1 out of 23 of us are veterans, not particular to Vietnam. And there's a story about him, and he really makes the case that it is a traumatizing experience to serve your country overseas, and that communalizing trauma is important. J.L. Mayers is in this edition of Trends. He's pictured here on the tracks that divide East and West Longmont. He chose this location because he said for the many generations that his family has lived in Longmont, they weren't always welcome on the west side of the tracks as a Latino family. They were supposed to live on the east side. However, we need to deal with this because we know that as we advance in years, when you look at the age distribution of our non-Hispanic white population compared to the Latino population, you can see what our future is. The Latino population trends younger right now, and what we know about young people is that they age, and so they are they are our future. We know when we look at where the population has been booming that the answer is Erie, Louisville, and Lafayette. When you look at that line about Erie, there's fine print underneath showing Erie's population, when you include Boulder County, is nearly 24,000 now. They've been in double-digit growth. And so that, of course, has big implications when we talk about traffic patterns, and we'll get into that in a minute. Next, we devote a chapter, as we always have, to education trends, what's new and persistent there. Well, for one thing, we are highly educated. When you look at those bars in the middle, you see the light color blue is Boulder County's percentage of bachelor's degree holders, which is twice as high as the national average. One of my favorite statistics is that here in the city of Boulder, adults with advanced degrees outnumber adults with bachelor's degrees alone. There is a feature, this is our cover story, Emily Sanchez. She graduated at the age of 17, is enrolled at Harvard now, the daughter of a mother who came here from Mexico and a father of Apache descent. She provides a social analysis of what's needed when it comes to access and representation that I think is well worth a look. This is one of 2 photographs of Gina Nocera that graces the pages of our Trends magazine this edition. Gina, please raise your hand. There she is. This is, of course, a picture of an event where Jared Polis and other lawmakers were speaking. It's a big deal that we have full-day kindergarten here in the state for the first time. And so this fall, in every district, almost every district, because it was voluntary, but it was free money to do so, we have full-day kindergarten. I was just dropping my kids off this morning and seeing 2 classes of kindergartners going in instead of a morning class followed by an afternoon class. And so that's a great thing. It's a big deal, particularly in our county for Boulder Valley School District, which is jumping from offering full-day kindergarten to about 1/3 of its students to all of them. And in St. Vrain, for a decade, they have figured out a way, just with their limited dollars, to provide a sliding scale full-day kindergarten experience. We know that our wide achievement gaps persist. This is a chart showing reading proficiency across grades 3 through 10. I'm personally, as I dive into this data, less interested in the green figure, which is the families showing basically a reflection of our demographics here in Boulder Valley. We have wealthier, more highly educated parents, and so on average, their children, those that don't qualify for free and reduced lunch, are performing higher than the state average. But when we look at the light blue shade, these are the kids on free and reduced lunch, and we see a trend among whether you're talking about the kids enrolled in Boulder Valley or St. Vrain or the state average. There's really not a difference as far as how well they're doing. So the question becomes, here where we have the highest educated, wealthiest population in the state, why can't we do better than average for the kids who are school dependent? And this is a question that is, really a burning one inside Boulder Valley right now with the leadership of our new superintendent, Dr. Rob Anderson. I saw you somewhere. Will you raise your hand? There we are. Thanks for being here. So, the school district is really trying to move mountains and take some action here on equity, has reorganized the district, and it's a story of hope and what's to come. As far as the story right now, there's a story about Anise Medrano. When I saw her TED Talk, I had to include her in the magazine. She talks about really a couple of influences that really positively impacted her, decided her to fight not just for her own success, she's enrolled at CU Boulder right now, but also to fight for equity. But she talks about, these outside the school district's positive impacts. For her, it was taking a trip down to meet some family for the first time in Mexico and seeing all of these professional family members that were really looked up to by her extended family. And she said, I'm going to come back and get my act together. But we need to more and more have school systems where this sort of support is found inside the system as well. We track health and human services. A couple of trends there. I guess the headline would be that our key health supports of Medicaid and CHIP Plus, which really had been on a very impressive ramp up, are tapering down, and I'll get into that in a minute. And also, vaping is a big deal, not just nationally, but right here. Looking at this chart, this is the Medicaid and CHIP Plus enrollment. And 2 years ago, when I gave this presentation, was really struck because we were at that peak number. We didn't know which way that would go. Well, 2 years later, we're kind of in a gray area. It's dipping. It's off about 10% at last count. Where is it going to go with questions like the public charge rule looming? But also, it's a positive reflection of a booming economy. When you have lower unemployment than really any time in recent memory, you're going to have more people enrolled on employer-sponsored health plans, and that is a good side of the trend. But we're watching this very closely. It seems to be something that could move. I mentioned vaping. Surveys of high school students inside BVSD shows that half of the high schoolers have tried this, and so it strikes me that this is generationally different. We have a generation that is not now just taking for granted that smoking is bad for you. It's taking a different form, but it's still smoking. And so we're going to have to grapple with that. We know that in this county we have low vaccination rates. We are right at or below what's called herd immunity. And with a couple of outbreaks in other parts of the country, there's more and more discussion inside our schools about how it may just be a matter of time. So there's certainly reasons that parents cite for not vaccinating their kids, but from a public health point of view, it's certainly something that we advocate for. Vaccinating your kids, not vaccinating. Lastly, in the health and human services, it's worth noting just all of the various efforts going on around mental health right now. There's new facilities that voters in the last election approved, a new tax to build. If you're over by the Boulder County Jail, you see the new construction, and a lot of that is for upstream prevention and intervention with mental health needs. Really recognizing this community did in passing that tax that the criminal justice system has really become the de facto place to receive mental health services for much of our community, and that needs to change. Also with the De La Cava Pavilion over at Boulder Community Health, we have a very assertive response to the need for more mental health services. Areas of focus that you see happening all across our county include really positive movement on the opioid crisis. I guess the headline for that would be that we have I think, begun to effectively shift our community's expectation of zero pain to a threshold of pain to tolerate. And in so doing, we're not just handing out prescription opioids at the rate that we used to, and I think that that's having a positive impact. Suicide prevention, LGBTQ, and teen mental health issues are also on the radar screen of many in this work. This continues to be probably the most consequential chart, I think, that we track, and this is housing prices. And you can see that Boulder's housing prices have always been expensive compared to the rest of the county and are up near $1 million as far as a median price. But everywhere has doubled in the last 15 years, including Longmont, which continues to be the most affordable place to buy a home in Boulder County. But you just need twice as much to buy a home than you did 15 years ago. And so we're looking into this and saying, okay, we see demographic impacts of this, sort of the Aspenizing of Boulder County. But we also see reasons that this is happening. 3.5 is probably one of the numbers that stands out the most to me after analyzing all this data, and that is the rate at which we have added jobs compared to houses. So over the last decade, we've added 3.5 jobs for every housing unit. Raise your hand if you feel like there's more traffic now than 10 years ago. 3.5 is why. So when we study what the census looks at with inflow, outflow, commuter patterns, it bears this out as well. Most of us, 4 out of 5 of us who live in Boulder County and are working, have jobs in Boulder County. It's just that we mostly live on the east side of the Greenbelt, and we come into Boulder where there's 2 jobs for every adult. And so that's why Arapahoe and Baseline and the Diagonal are so clogged up. We know from a study on from the Colorado Center on Law and Policy that our child care costs literally rival housing. Raise your hand if you have experienced this recently. Okay, some parents here. If you were just to drive down to Pueblo County, you would nearly cut your child care bill in half. And the same dynamic is at play when we look at what it costs to really live here. So the self-sufficiency standard was developed to help people understand that while we talk about the economy oftentimes in terms of who's in poverty versus not, that poverty threshold remains at around $26,000 for a family of 2 parents and a couple of little kids, when that same family in Boulder County actually needs nearly over triple that amount in order to not need any sort of a subsidy. We're not even talking about buying brand name food at the grocery store. And we also know that the median household income does compensate upwards for the non-Hispanic white population in Boulder County compared to the national average you see on that chart on the bottom of the screen. But that actually a reverse dynamic is at play within Latino households, where they are bringing in less in Boulder County than the national average. And so they've got a double challenge here locally when it comes to getting by. The gender wage gap is really out of control in Boulder County. This is not a new trend, but it's worth just holding these 2 slides up next to one another. You see pictured here actually a field day in front of the courthouse that JVA Engineering put on. And I love this picture because it sort of shows, the men are the ones still making the higher salaries and the women are lagging. In JVA's case, though, they had a couple of employees who brought this to the attention of management, and over the last several years have corrected it. So in the last year, actually women are on average making more than men in that particular firm. But we see this disparity. I mean, even with starting with high school dropouts in Boulder County, women are making $24,000 compared to men making nearly $31,000, all the way on up to the highest level of education. Women are bringing home nearly $56,000 compared to $96,000. So we have an article here that I believe, Shay, did you write this one? About ending child poverty in Boulder, and it was Julie Van Domelen, who's head of EFA and has written really a compelling white paper about this. She makes the point that if you look at the families in the city of Boulder who are living in poverty with children, actually the cost to lift them out of poverty is about $5 million a year. And when you think about what the city council allocates for such things as municipalization or other priorities, those line items are higher than $5 million a year. And so Julie's making the point, actually we could solve this if we had the public will. With the environment, I'm featuring a couple of sheep here because as you saw in the video about Marcus McCauley's farm up near Longmont, he is an example of a farmer who is looking at the neighboring property which is owned by the city of Boulder and seeing that because it has not been farmed in so long, the wind has blown so much soil up against his fence that his sheep were able to walk over the fence. And so he's working with the city of Boulder to try to help them do what's next. When you talk about Boulder County and you think about the fact that there's 320,000 residents and the fact that there are 315,000 acres of publicly owned or protected land, and you think about the fact that more than a third of that, really all of it on the plains, is open space land. On the one hand, you have to just cherish the remarkable fact of that since the 60s, we've had the vision to collectively purchase all of this open space. And then on the other hand, you have to think about the unintended consequences, one of which is environmental. When you have all of this land, you got to work the land, and we're not staying up to speed in that regard. On the environment, we see that the factors most contributing to our chronic ozone problem, of which there is one really across the Denver metro, we are very challenged by the inversion weather pattern that sends the airstream around both sides of the Rocky Mountains and then mixes here and settles. We see that oil and gas extraction in Weld County primarily, motor vehicles and commercial buildings are contributing most to this. And so when you think about the motor vehicles, yes, we have a reputation for being very environmental. The national average is that 75% of us commute alone. And here in Boulder County, we do better than that. 65% of us commute alone. But that's being completely eclipsed by the clogged up diagonal Arapahoe baseline traffic patterns that we've developed over the last 10 years due to other policies and just the fact that we're a place that people want to live. So I've spoke of Marcus, and then there are some impressive efforts going on inside the city of Boulder, really focused on trying to restore and preserve our trees. The emerald ash borer has been really devastating, and in recent months we've heard about how it's spread outside of the Boulder County quarantine. Bees with pollinators as a focus, and then I mentioned soil as well. And so in the next trends report in 2 years, we can expect to report on these baseline indicators that are just now being measured. When you talk about these 315,000 acres, another way of saying that is maybe almost 500 square miles of publicly owned and protected land, you have to ask who is out there enjoying this land. And we know that we don't yet have the policies in place that make this open space and forest really as known to some of our minority populations or as used. And so until we are all using this public land equally, then it is an equity issue. Certainly everyone has the freedom to recreate in whatever way they want. But when we have preservation policies in place that say don't set up a picnic shelter, and we have Latino families in our community that like to recreate in big family groups, then the impact of that is that you're saying this land is open to some but not to all. All right. Wow, this is a very civic audience. So in our environment, just to sum up, there's a couple of controversies and fights going on right now. And it's easy to think that it's sort of a united Boulder County against, the rest of other forces coming in. But as I reflect on this, it really holds a mirror up to who we are and what we're grappling with. The campaign to stop gross dams expansion really is something that feels unified here in Boulder County on the one hand, but on the other hand, expanding a reservoir as opposed to building a new reservoir somewhere else has a smaller environmental impact. Providing for the future water needs of the entire metro area is an equity issue. And so on the one hand, we like to say, well, times have changed, we can be better at conserving, and yes, all that is true, but it certainly holds a mirror up to where we are right now. Also, the fight with Excel to create a municipal utility, at the same time, it's worth noting this bottom chart that has shown really positive progress on the power company's part as far as getting more and more renewables into the mix. It's not as fast as the goals we've set, but it does hold a mirror to the fight that we're in. With our arts and culture, you know, a pervasive theme if you interview people at the SCFD, as Cindy Sutter did, or people across all the various different mediums that you can participate in the arts, there's a big push for equity and inclusion. I would say, you know, there's depending on the organization, a different level of understanding and practice when it comes to this. But it definitely was a theme, and we applaud that and we support that. It is worth noting that despite a booming economy, arts income and employment had dipped in the last 2 years after some solid years of record gains. And so you see that when full-time and part-time arts jobs are less plentiful, contract gigs go up. And that's what you're seeing in that trend. If you have an opportunity, it's worth Googling the Undocu Monologues, the latest effort from Modus Theater. They've got, if you go to shoeboxstories.com, you can look up this effort. What's that? Was that Kirsten? Oh, hi, Cara. Shoeboxstories.org. Thank you for that correction. But they're doing good work as far as surfacing local stories of people who have come from elsewhere but make Boulder County their home. Our chapter on civic participation and giving points out that there's much work yet to do in achieving inclusive and connected communities. We all here in Boulder know the story of Zaid Atkinson. Had an opportunity to interview him in the civic participation and giving story. And this is, you know, really pointing out a deep issue for us, and we are in what I'd call a double bind in a community that really flies a progressive flag. One of the things we do is we look at voter registration, and in Boulder County, it is, you know, predominantly Democrats and independents, a small minority of Republicans. There's all sorts of different data points that you could look to say, yes, the brand in Boulder County is progressive or liberal on the one hand. On the other hand, if that is the case, then why do we have incidents such as Zaid happening? And why do we have in our Community Foundation poll such consistent rank order year in and year out? We've been doing this poll for over a decade, and it always shows that when asked who our community is most open to amongst these subgroups, gay and lesbian residents of Boulder County are perceived to be those who we are most welcoming to, and our immigrants and racial and ethnic minorities consistently are the ones that we are least open to. One opportunity to connect and know our neighbors better is upcoming on April 1st, and in the lead up to it, we've got the decennial count. Happens every 10 years with the census, and we've got some impressive mobilization happening. My hats go off to the people in Longmont. Is there anyone here from Longmont that's been working on the census mobilization effort? We had a presentation last week, and many of them were there. The city of Boulder, Ryan, I saw you here. If you're working either on Boulder or in the nonprofit CCC, raise your hand. Great. Well, thank you for your good work. This is a big deal. It's really an opportunity for us to have everyone stand up and be counted. This is shaping up to be what some experts are calling a perfect storm year for the census. It's for several reasons. For one, it's going to be the first where the primary mode of having yourself counted is online. And so with certain populations that have less facility with logging on and doing their business online, that's going to present challenges. And you know, what's at stake is about $2,300 per year per resident of Colorado. That's the amount of braided funding that comes in from all the various federal sources based on the census count. Has impact as far as Colorado's expecting to get an 8th congressional district if everyone is counted. And so this will be a test. In addition to the online aspect of it, which has not been given enough testing, there's certainly been a lot of fear around the citizenship question that was settled by the Supreme Court, but some would say the damage has already been done as far as sowing fear. And in addition to that, Congress has been starving funding for the census for more than a decade now. And due to this long burn of less and less being spent, there just is less outreach being done. On the positive side, the local mobilization is looking to be the biggest ever. And so we hope that that's able to overcome and compensate for some of the shortcomings. So the last slide is to just show once again that on the one hand, due to the fact that we are a wealth center for the state of Colorado and for the nation, our philanthropic giving in pure dollars puts us as a top 5% community. But as a community that's in the top 5% of wealth nationally, the hard dollars really obscure the story, and that is when you think about the percentage of people's wealth and income that is being donated, it is far below the national average. It's even dipped a couple of ticks, and it's now 2.56%. That's the percent of our gross income that we're declaring on our taxes is to charitable giving. And so while our total contributions in Boulder County are $292 million, there is a $68 million giving opportunity. That's what we would give collectively if we were to come up to the national average. And this, furthermore, this study from the Chronicle on Philanthropy has gotten a little bit more sophisticated in this iteration. It starts to show the breakout by income bracket. And so you can see that in Colorado, as well as what we find nationally, those who are actually closer to experiencing financial hardship are the ones who tend to give a greater portion of their take-home in order to help others who are experiencing something that they may be able to resonate with a little bit better. So that does it for our presentation. Really the theme that came out of all of the research this time around was the need to discover and connect and engage, that together we can find our way. These are big population level issues. No one of us can tackle them alone, but together we can make progress if we all look at what's going on and try more and more every day to know people outside of just our friend and family network. That's what's going to move us up to community level change. So with that, that concludes our chief findings from the Trends Report. Thank you for listening. We've got 15 or 20 minutes left, and I think we have someone running around with a microphone. Oh, that guy. Jeff Hirota's running around with a microphone. And if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question, I'd be happy to take a few. Thank you.
So I had two questions. One was, does the Trends Report get fed into the strategic plan for Boulder County? Like, does it help?
Okay. Should I answer that question first?
And then my other question.
You don't have to ask a two-part question.
No, it's two
I'll let you
completely.
ask your second one.
Oh, and then my other question was, do we still have the worthy cause tax?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question actually addresses a common misperception. Even though Boulder County government is a major contributor to the financial ability of us to produce the trends report, there is no necessary, nexus between what we dig up and what they do. It so happens that, I know that they use many of their various departments use the trends report. I know that we presented to a gathering of more than 500 of county employees 2 years ago when the report came out then. And so I have to think that it feeds into that. But that is the very nature of this report, whether it's Boulder County, a school district, nonprofits, various businesses, or faith communities. We provide this as a resource so that you can take it and run with it. Therein lies the challenge of leading without authority. And the worthy cause tax is still in play. Any other questions? Looks like Mika, is that right?
I was just going to say, it's still in play for another 15 years. You just voted it in again in 2017.
Great. Thank you, Mika. I oftentimes reflect that the Q&A, I'm so thankful for everyone in the audience because they're so much smarter than me. Yes?
Yes, my name is Luz Galicia. I just want to say thank you to Roseanne. I'm one housing organizing for the mobile homes here in Boulder, and Victor is here with me. We just appreciate the effort that you put. I listened the Rosanna and I was crying, and the people that has been listening. It's very touchy. It means a lot for me, for my organization 9 to 5, for members of the community. I just want to say thank you so much, Rosanna, and this is just the beginning of a big fight.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we got one right here.
Sorry, I didn't see where. Where's the question?
Thanks, Chris. That was really excellent. I remember at the last presentation you did a couple of years ago for the last trends report, you kind of nicely summarized it by saying it was the tale of two cities. Would you say that that's still the tagline, or would you amend it for your findings in this current report?
I'd say it's the tale of one city with a housing crisis. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? All right, I will take that as my cue that you would rather get on with your day. Thank you very much for your time.